Hi there. My name is Jennifer Mitchell Earley, and I help individuals and teams achieve organizational success. Welcome to Leadership Matters. I also liked the way that Mayor Fry of Minneapolis and Mayor Carter of St. Paul, how when they both came to the podium, the first thing they did was express understanding of the gravity of the situation. They understood why people were outraged. They understood what transpired and they put words to it. They indicated that Mr. Floyd was unjustly murdered at the hands of a Minneapolis police officer. That came from the head of that municipality, the leader of that police force. As an elected official, I could empathize with their positions and being thrust into the forefront of the nation with all eyes on them, all scrutiny, because they are the leadership of Mayor Fry, Jacob Fry in particular, because he is the mayor of Minneapolis. So he is the head of that municipality, and everything that has been done, he is responsible for as the leader. And so for him to understand and comprehend what transpired and not try to sweep it under the rug, not try to be vague, not try to play with the facts or, not try to pass the buck. I respected that. I respected Mayor Carter of St. Paul when he indicated initially, when they asked about the responses to the arrests and about the arrest, that he was forthright in where they were in the process, and that it was a process, and that, they weren't jumping to conclusions. He couldn't talk about what was going to happen tomorrow. He was still dealing with what was going on that day. And so just the authenticity that Minnesota team in general showed was to me great. Was a sign of great leadership. They worked together. They were openly communicating with the public. They empathized. They empathized with the residents and with just the atrocities that had taken place in the murder of Mr. Floyd. And they were just walking through it. And I feel like they allowed us to walk through it with them. Other leaders that I was impressed with this week and this past weekend, Governor Andrew Cuomo. I mean, I've always been impressed with him from his pandemic response forward. But what I liked was when he was asked a question, he didn't pander because it wasn't happening in New York at that moment. He said he sided with the protesters. He recounted generations, even back to his own state, where African-American men had been murdered at the hands of police brutality. He understood why people were feeling just disgusted and disgruntled. Those aren't even strong enough words for the pain is palpable. And as a leader, we look for people, especially that don't look like us, you can never really understand unless you walk in the shoes of an African-American person. You can never understand the overt and covert racism that we deal with on a daily basis. You can never understand the teachings that we're taught from a toddler up or a young person up on how to protect yourselves. So we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. If you don't listen to the police, you're going to die. If you do listen to the police, you're going to die. If you're out in the jog, someone's going to kill you. When we talk about Black Lives Matter, then we're assailed because all lives matter, but not all lives are being snuffed out at the rate that ours are, with no consequences. So that aside, I was impressed with the fact that Governor Cuomo could even say, hey, it's a two-edged sword. Even the state of New York has been standing in that spot, and no one had to remind him of Eric Garner. He recounted everyone. I talked about how it, from generation to generation to generation, It's only so much that people can take. And he understood why people were protesting. So I respect that about Governor Cuomo. I respect the fact that he is factual, that he is data driven, that science leads him, and that he is emotionally intelligent. He understands what people are going through, but he's also controlled. He's, self-aware and of his responses. And what can I say? I was impressed with Governor Cuomo. That brings me next to, and they're in no order, it's just how they appear, who I thought about. The mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms. What I love about Mayor Bottoms was the fact that her passion and her concern was on full display. She said, I called my son when the riots broke out to see, and ask, where are you? Get home. I can't protect you. You don't need to be out. And when she did her press conference, she said to her constituents, like my son, I can't protect you. So much is going on. And it's not, let me be clear now, it's not just the protesting, and because the protest for the large part has been reported to be peaceful. It's at dusk and the night falls when the reportedly infiltrators from outside of that municipality are the ones who come with a mind to loot and to destroy and to, leave as much carnage behind as possible, come in. That those are the things she's talking about. And while I'm on that, let me just say this. As an elected official, I have mad respect for their restraint, because what you may not understand from the outside looking in is the balancing act that these leaders have to achieve in empathizing and having compassion and understanding and having the willingness to, and encouraging, and a lot of times, their residents to go forward, express your First Amendment right, have your feelings, come together, encourage one another, lament together, mourn together. To balance that, though, with is vandalism. There are bombs being thrown at police officers. There are, cars being set on fire, buildings being set on fire, arsons that can lead to damage that, in case we've all forgotten, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're in an economic downturn. That's a nice way of saying we're headed straight into a depression. Municipalities have already been complaining that we're not getting help from the federal government with COVID response, with loss of revenue from having to shut everything down. Now you have municipalities in a place where they have to repair and replace, rebuild police stations, police cars, and the like. And yes, there is insurance. And no, I'm not saying any of this to say, oh, woe is me, like this wasn't a direct consequence of abusive behavior. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that as an elected official, as a leader, remember we're looking at this through the lens of leaders, you have to balance how far you're going to let the people go to express themselves with when do you have to restore the peace and say, okay, enough is enough. We can't have the vandalism. We can't have the danger. We can't have the destruction. I have to preserve the peace. We have to take control of our state and or our city, or both. Lori Lightfoot came out, the mayor of Chicago, mincing no words. She was disgusted. She was appalled. I mean, she said it, her body language. But as a leader, we look to, okay, that's how you feel. She also did this. She said she empathized with protest. I protested. I've been to a couple protests myself. The people who are coming out to express their anguish and their disappointment and their frustration with the system, you are welcome. But then there's other people that came with, she said, bowling balls. She said they came with urine in bottles, prepared for battle. And as a leader, she set expectations. She said, no, not in Chicago. she immediately put into place the curfew and said that's not going to happen there. As leaders, sometimes we have to take a firm position and set expectations, even in the midst of what's turned into now to racial rioting. At some point, leaders have to take control of the situation and provide a path forward.
People continue to pour out in the streets, peacefully protesting the unjust murder of George Floyd and the countless others who have been brutally murdered at the hands of law enforcement and other corrupt vigilantes. Change. It's time for a change. We won't stop until a change comes.
Systemic change, fundamental change that affects the way the entire system operates, such as the culture of an organization or a police department, is never easy. Cultural change is not easy. Really, no change is easy.
Systemic change. Fundamental change to the entire criminal justice system is huge. Not to say that it can't be done, simply stating that there are a lot of nuances to this complex problem. Systemic change requires collaboration from all stakeholders in the system: judges, prosecutors, defenders, policy and lawmakers, law enforcement leaders, chiefs of police and sheriffs, and administrators, governors, mayors, county executives, and safety directors.
Systemic change starts with gradual institutional reforms, small incremental changes to acceptable and appropriate behavior. These changes have to be advocated, accepted, cultivated, and encouraged from the top to the bottom frontline workers. Change is not readily accepted by people. Change is new, it's uncharted territory, it's unnerving. People don't like change. However, change is necessary. Anything that doesn't adapt and change dies. Therefore, change has to be thought out completely. It has to be understood. There needs to be predetermined solutions to objections that will arise to the change.
For our purposes, as we discuss the leadership on display as it relates to the murder of George Floyd, we're looking for our elected leaders to stop police brutality against Black and brown people. Police brutality goes beyond deadly physical interactions with police. They use unjustified physical force and cause death. It also includes the emotional and verbal assaults used to dehumanize, humiliate, harass, and intimidate victims. As it relates to leadership's response to law enforcement, we are looking for legislators to condemn police brutality, racial profiling, and the use of excessive force by enacting policies that ensure accountability and racial equity in law enforcement practices. Administration to administer said policies, providing oversight by proactively monitoring the actions of law enforcement agencies, swiftly investigating and litigating cases in direct violation of said policies and/or the law. What can we do in our roles as leaders? Lead with shared values: justice, opportunity, community, and equality. Educate yourself and others regarding how structural racism operates within institutions, policies, and laws. Listen with an ear to understand when marginalized folk talk about their experiences. When you see structural or systemic racism, say it and/or document it. Finally, advocate for criminal justice reform. Support movements like Black Lives Matter that raise awareness of police brutality and help expose and dismantle structural racism. Because leadership matters.
These are my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours. Please feel free to comment below. And if you like this video, hit the thumbs up and also hit the notification bell so that you can be notified when I upload new videos. Subscribe to my channel today.